Hi, I'm Chris Trudeau.
And I'm Steve Peter.
We're with Wisconsin Department of Agriculture, Trade, and Consumer Protection, Weights and Measures. Today, we want to demonstrate the proposed NIST 133 procedure for testing animal bedding. Two different tests we're going to be doing today. One of which is compressed animal bedding when it comes packaged, and in the compressed form, it looks like this. The other test that we're going to show you today is expanded animal bedding. These two test measures that you see here are going to be used for testing the animal bedding when it's in an expanded form. Steve, what are we going to need to do these tests today?
Well, first we're going to need some calibrated test measures. The dimensions for these boxes can be found in Handbook 133, Table 3.4. This particular box is for your 1 cubic foot packages. The dimensions are 8 inches by 8 1/4 by 26 inches tall. This box is 12 by 12 by 39 inches tall, and that will hold 3 cubic feet.
That's right. Now remember, these boxes here we're going to use for testing the expanded volume of our animal bedding. This is the same test that you use for mulch in NIST Handbook 133, be section 3.10. When we're testing the animal bedding in a compressed manner, as in this package, we're going to use the same process for testing peat moss, to be section 3.9. Looking at these boxes, you can see that all sides are constructed of marine plywood, and the front of the boxes is constructed of plexiglass. If you're going to have one of these boxes made, the best way to go for the front is to get some plexiglass that is at least a 1/4 of an inch thick. That way, on your test measure, when you fill it, you aren't getting any flex. Any flex in that plexiglass may alter your results and cause error in your results as well. So the thicker the plexiglass you have there, the better. Also, the 3/4 inch marine plywood doesn't allow for any shift in the box. You don't want any shift or any distortion in the test measure when you fill it. Along the front side, we have a ruler extending all the way up, as well as the back, we have a ruler extending up the back. It's beneficial to have a ruler on both the front and the back so that when you fill the test measure, you can read across the animal bedding in the front and the back, and it gives you a better reading. A couple other things you'll want when testing animal bedding: just a steel rule or a tape measure when you're doing the peat moss procedure for measuring the compressed volume of the animal bedding. Also, a bullet level at least 6 inches in length, so when you're doing the expanded volume, filling the test measure, you can put that level on the top of the animal bedding, as we will show you, and level it out. Now we're going to test this package, which is a small package of animal bedding that's generally used for small pets such as hamsters or rabbits. This particular package is 500 cubic inches in compressed volume, and it declares 1,200 cubic inches in expanded volume. The first test that we're going to do is when the package is still in its form of compressed volume.
Handbook 130 requires that animal bedding have both the compressed and the usable volume on the label. We're going to follow the peat moss procedure from Handbook 133 to measure the compressed package. So we're going to take an average of 3 measurements of the length.
All right, Steve, you take the measurements and I'll record them down for our test results.
Okay, 17 1/8.
Okay.
Sixteen 3/4.
16 3/4.
And 16 5/8. Nine.
9 again.
8 7/8. 4 1/8.
4 1/4.
4 1/4.
And 4 1/4.
Well, Chris, what are the results?
All right, Steve, after doing the math here on our averages, looks like we're at 613.9 cubic inches on the compressed volume. Our declared volume was 500 cubic inches, so this is over and this is definitely acceptable. So now we can move on and check what the expanded volume of this package is. To do that, we'll get our test measure. This test measure is a 1 cubic foot test measure. We're going to follow the procedure used for testing mulch in NIST Handbook 133. It's a revised procedure, but has some similarities. So what we'll need to do is we'll set this package down on our table. We'll cut it open, we'll start breaking it up. We want to make sure everything's broken up so there's no clumps and that it will freely fall into the test measure. Notice our test measure is on a sturdy surface. When we're filling it, we aren't going to want to bump it or disturb the test measure in any way. Steve, can you cut this open for me?
Sure. Sure can.
Thank you. All right. Try to get this all out of here without making a mess and without losing any of the animal bedding. Great. Flop that over. Make sure you clean out all the corners of the bag so that there's no animal bedding stuck in the corners. Okay. Now we'll just use our hands to break this up thoroughly. Making sure it's free of clumps and any compaction. All right, now that we have all our animal bedding broken up and free of any compaction, we can place it in our test measure. This bag declared 1,200 cubic inches of volume, right, Steve?
That's right.
Okay, so on our test measure, we're going to want to fill how high?
18 1/4 inches.
18 1/4. So coming up the side, we'll want to fill to 18 1/4. If it makes 18 1/4, then we know that the declared volume is correct. So I'm going to grab first handful and just lightly drop it in. Kind of double checking, making sure there's no clumps in there. Looks like we're going to make it.
It's close.
Okay, so our last little bit of animal bedding from this package is going in the test measure. Just be real careful not to disturb the test measure at all. Bumping it or shaking it in any manner could affect the test results. So we want to get it all in there, but undisturb the test measure. And now that we have it all in, I'm just going to use my hands to carefully level it out. I'm not going to push down at all. I'm just going to kind of toss the animal bedding to each corner so that we can level it out. Notice I'm not pushing down on it, just moving it around so that we get the corners are filled and it's as level as possible. And then we'll use the torpedo level to get the actual level of it. When I put the level in, I'm going to just hold on to it, put it across the top of the plane. I'm not going to push down at all. Make sure that's level going diagonal. Then we'll check our other corner, going corner to corner. And that looks pretty good. So we'll take a reading on this. We need to be at 18 1/4, remember, to make volume looks like we're going to make that.
About 20 and 5/8.
20 and 5/8. So this package has the proper amount in it. It expanded to more than what the package declared, and so this is all right. This would pass. Before doing the actual testing of the expanded volume for the animal bedding, you're going to want to pick out a location that's suitable. It's suggested that you have an indoor location if at all possible, just to reduce the effect of any environmental conditions such as rain or wind. And also you want to be in a low traffic area where you're not going to have to move, or people aren't coming through, or there's not a forklift coming by that might blow some of the animal bedding away. So just have a nice flat spot. You'll also want a decent sized tarp or drop cloth so that you can open up the bag and it's easy on cleanup, and also you keep all the animal bedding on that tarp so you don't lose any when doing the test procedure. Steve and I are going to test this large bale of bedding here. This large bale is 2.5 cubic feet when it's compressed, and it's supposed to expand up to 8 cubic feet once we break it open. These large bales are generally used in farm settings or for horse bedding. They're much larger, and when they expand to 8 cubic feet, that's quite a bit. So what we're going to want to do is we'll lay this down, and we'll have to open up the package on the tarp, and we're going to start breaking it up. It's important that we break it up very thoroughly, and we're going to take some time to do that.
Zip it down the middle?
Yeah, we can cut this down the middle. We're going to want to cut it wide open, because you want to get everything out, even any bedding that's wedged in the corner of the package. We're going to want to get that out as well. So if you can cut it wide open, that'll be great. Notice it's a little bit messy, so it's nice to have a large enough tarp so that if some flies around when you're opening the package up, it doesn't get lost, and it'll make it into the test measure. I think that's pretty good.
So too.
Now that our animal bedding is all broken up and it's free flowing, we're going to use our hands to fill the test measure. Good thing about using your hands is that you can pick it up, and as you're filling the test measure, you can just drop it in, and you can also feel if there's any clumps that you missed the first time around, make sure those get broken up. When you're filling the test measure, you want to make sure that the test measure's on a sturdy surface, it's level, and that you're not going to bump or disturb the test measure in any way. Also, when you're picking up the animal bedding, you simply want to let it fall in. You don't want to throw it in, you don't want to push down on any. This is supposed to be just as if you were filling a stall in a manger and just throwing it in there with a fork. It needs to be free-flowing and non-compressed. Okay, Steve, why don't we start filling our test measure? This test measure is 3 cubic feet. We have 8 cubic foot of material here declared on the package, so we'll need to fill this approximately 2.5 times. We have a few large trash bags. What we'll do, once we get reading approximately the first one, we'll take a reading off that, we'll dump it into the garbage bag, and then we'll just keep filling from there. So why don't we fill for the first round?
Okay, Chris?
Notice how I'm just letting this fall in, and no pressure's put on it. If a little bit falls out, that's all right. That's why you have your tarp down, and we can sweep that up later on and make sure that that gets into the test measure. Okay, so right now we're pretty close. We were shooting to be right around 36 inches on our test measure, which would give us 3 cubic feet. You don't have to get exactly on there, it's just a rough fill point. But what I'm gonna do now is very gently, using my hands, I'm just gonna try to eyeball this so it's fairly level, and then I'll use my torpedo level to get an actual reading on it. And again, very gently, I'm not gonna push down on that animal bedding at all. I don't want it to compress down. I just want it to be flat and level so that we can get an accurate reading from front to back and side to side. I'm going to use my torpedo level. You should have a torpedo level that's at least 6 inches in length so that you get a good reading going from side to side, but you also want to make sure that it fits within the test measure. So from side to side, I'm not even going to set this down. I'm going to hold on to it and just keep it against the top of the plane. And that looks fairly good right there. And coming over there, we're good in the center. I'm going to check it on all sides to make sure that we're level going across front to back, and then also side to side. Okay. Once we have it level, then we can take our reading. Steve, will you show us how we're going to take a reading on here?
Sure. We're going to look at the scale, and we're going to line up the marks of the scale in front with the scale in back. That way we eliminate any parallax error. And I'm reading 36 7/8 of an inch.
All right.
So we would record that reading, we'll empty the test measure, and then we'll continue on with the second fill. It's on the handle. Sure.
Okay.
Maybe I'm going to have to scrape.
Now that we've emptied our test measure, we're filling it up for a second time. We're going to place some more animal bedding in there and take another reading. We aren't going to make it. Grab the last handful of animal bedding here. We're on our second fill, and I'm going to grab the last handful that I can grab and put this into the test measures. Steve, would you please grab the broom and the dustpan? We'll sweep up a little bit here and make sure that we get all of the product into the test measure. So we have the last bit of animal bedding here on the dustpan. I'm going to gently place that into the test measure. This is our second fill, and remember we were hoping to fill about 2.5 box test measures full of animal bedding. The declared expanded volume of animal bedding on the package was to be 8 cubic feet. It looks like we're going to come up a little short. We'll take a reading here and see where we're at. Again, I'm just going to level this out with my hand very gently. And being this product is a product that's not being tested by many programs, it's not uncommon to find short products. So it may be beneficial to get a test measure or a couple different sizes of test measures so you can test any small packages to large packages and start taking a look at what the expanded and compressed volume of these packages are, and if they're actually consumers are being treated fairly and getting their dollars worth. Again, I'm going to take some level readings just going across, once on the side, in the middle, and on the end. And then I'll take on the back, the front. Very good. How short are we, Steve?
Well, our measurement 30 inches and 1/8.
Okay, so we're well over 2 cubic feet short on expanded volume, according to our one sample here. This package, which is labeled to expand up to 8 feet, cost about $5.50, so that adds up to approximately $1.50 that's being shorted here to the consumer. Someone who's buying multiple packages for their use is obviously losing out on their money and not getting the fair amount of product that's declared on the package weight. Note that we just tested one of these. We'd also want to follow up and test 11 more to get a proper sample size.
So to sum up, we've demonstrated how to measure animal bedding both in the compressed state and in the expanded state. In the compressed form, we follow the Peat procedure from Handbook 133, and in the expanded usable form, it's a modified version of the mulch testing technique from Handbook 133.
These two procedures can be used by you to make sure that consumers are being treated fairly, they're getting the product that they pay for and that they're intentionally buying, and also that there's equity within the marketplace so that one company isn't being out by another company because they're not putting in the proper amount of product in their packages.